Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Swing Museum podcast. I'm your host, Jan Eberle, and this is also our maiden voyage. We're so glad that you could be here. Many of you may remember me from my radio show called The Swing Museum. It was an hour that aired on ksav.org under the very capable nest of Dan White, program director. And I was with them for several years, and for those of you who may be following the podcast, well, the reason why I'm using my name, Swing Museum, is because I've promised myself that I would play at least one or two of the songs that I love from the era of jazz and standards, and so I'll hit you with a little bit of that later. But what the podcast is really all about, it's about celebrating art. Where, what types, when, and because I am broadcasting to you from Central Florida, much of it will be connected to the Sarasota area and Central Florida, and there will be other times in which I will be able to reach out a little further. But first of all, I'd like to welcome you. I have two places for you to go, and what I'll say at the beginning of every podcast, that if you hear something interesting, make sure you've got a pen and a pad handy, because sometimes writing some things down that you can check out is well worth it. One of the groups that much of, but not all, of our art displays, stories, visits, and everything else will be about an organization called the National League of American Pen Women. I am a member of the Pen Women. I'm a member of the Sarasota chapter of Pen Women. So if you're really interested in checking out what this is from the get-go, then you'll understand when you listen to the podcast what we're doing. I encourage you to visit nlapw.org for a history of the Pen Women, or sarasotapenwomen.com. But before we go any further, I am feeling that itch for the music. So I'd like to take you to my 2006 album called Blue Champagne, and I've got a crush on you. How glad the many millions of Toms and Dicks and Williams would be to capture me. But you had such persistence, you wore down my resistance. I fell, and it was swell. You're my big and brave and handsome Romeo. How I won you, I will never, never know. It's not that you're attractive, but oh, my heart grew active when you came into view. I've got a crush on you, sweetie pie, all the day and night time. Hear me sigh, I never had the least notion that I could fall with so much emotion. Could you coo? Could you care for a cunning cottage we could share? The world will pardon my mush, 'cause I've got a crush, my baby, on you. Could you coo? Could you care for a cunning cottage? We could share the world. Will pardon my mush, 'cause I have got a crush, my baby, on you. Well, during my short year or so as a member of the Pen Women, I got to know so many different artists, so many beautiful women who are so talented. They are painters and illustrators, photographers and writers, composers and musicians, anything that you could ever conceive of being in art. They have it. And so I've always felt very welcomed. Well, I became fast friends with a woman with whom I originally saw her platform as she was talking about the Pen Women at a Kiwanis meeting that I was attending. Her name is Barbara Jendrysik. Well, Barb and I hit it off pretty soon. We were fast friends, and we talked about a project that I had called Winnie's Farm. It's a children's story manuscript that I had been sitting on since, 1997. I know. So we got together. She read my manuscript, and I took a look at some of her illustration ideas, and we ended up working together. So Winnie's Farm was born in October of this last year. I'm going to be showing you some beautiful illustrations here as we're talking from Barbara, and some of the highlights that we went through were really discovering who the characters were. It was really a fascinating process, one I had never been able to share with another artist in quite this way. So Barbara has become a mentor, really, to me. She has so much background and so deep a feeling about where she came from as an artist. So it's always good to fall back on those relationships, probably forever. Take a look. The year is 1876. Imagine living on a farm in the middle of Nebraska during the dead of winter. "11-year-old Dmitri did the best he could caring for the family farm, while his father lay deathly ill.
But I made a deal with God. I made a deal that I would have faith in him if he would save my papa. We made a deal, God. It's not fair."
Do you believe in angels? Do you believe in a power greater than us all? There is hope. Welcome to Winnie's Farm. Well, if you're just joining us, you are tuned in to the Swing Museum podcast. I'm your host, Jan Eberle, and I'd like to give super props to my husband, Ray, for all of the wonderful production work that he does on my book trailers, on the podcasts themselves. He really is a very talented producer, and, I happen to love the dude, too. Also, if you want to see what's going on in my website, it's the same address as the YouTube address here, janeberleschaberg.com. And I've got children's books and adult books. I've got my CDs there, and I also have an archive of my radio programs that I used to put through ksav.org. A shout out also to Dan White, program director, who not only humored me. I know he's going to get mad when I say that, but listen, I had a great time doing my radio show, The Swing Museum, with KSAV. I met a lot of great people, had a lot of great listeners from here and over and abroad. So big shout out for him. Also for housing, making a second home for my podcast. He's going to be having an archive page for the podcast starting right away after the first one, so you'll have 2 locations to go to. There are other places, going back to my works, that you can go to, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and the like, to purchase the books. If you would like one autographed, you can go right through my website, and I'd be happy to send that to you myself. Before we get on to some really good pen women moments, and I've got some really good stuff to show you today, I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about a woman that I'm going to be having on next month's podcast. She is a very powerful and knowledgeable person in the world of publishing. She started her own publishing company beginning with children's books some years back. And since then, of course, has branched out into what she calls her cozy little novelettes. And so she is not only very knowledgeable, but she is somebody who has seen the front door and the back door and everything in between about this business. And one of the things that she advocates so greatly for is children's literacy. How important is that? The next time you have an opportunity to get involved with a club event, say for instance, the Kiwanis, Every Child is a Reader, or some of the children's book festivals that are going on where you have an opportunity to celebrate reading with children, please do so, because they are our future, and there's so much out there to teach them. So I think you'll really enjoy the events nonetheless. So onward and upward, I would like to show you some fantastic pictures and tell you about something that the Pen Women were involved in just in November at a place in Venice, Florida, called the Venice Art Center. And it was such a wonderful event. The Pen Women were able to bring their art into the Art Center for an entire month on display. And we had a beautiful reception in which people for 2 hours were able to come in and enjoy in some wine and some beverages and snacks, and to talk to the authors that were there with their books, like myself, people who were with their art, with their paintings, with their canvas, with their photography, in this beautiful hall where this art, it just covered the entire room. So I'd like to share some photographs with you and, take a look at what the Pen Women are really about. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Eberle, your host of the Swing Museum podcast. Tune in by day to ksav.org to hear the best of old-time radio since, well, old-time radio. And check out their broadcast schedule where you can listen to a different hosted show every evening. How fabulous. But don't forget to check out my Swing Museum podcast archive page for the latest and greatest in my world and the world of art. So tune in to ksav.org, your radio home on the web. So welcome back to the podcast. As I had said earlier, I was going to spend a reasonably good amount of time talking pen women, and more pen women. I have something very special to share with you that we recently were able to cover at the beautiful Bird Key Yacht Club in Sarasota. We had our monthly meeting there and lots of business to cover. And along with it, some of the pen women brought some of their things to display. We had a wonderful speaker, and I also was granted a short interview by one of our premier members, Polly Curran. Not only is she always willing to step in and do anything in this world for you without even losing the smile on her face, at least the way she shows it. But she is also a very talented photographer, and she's going to share some really interesting stuff today about the art of ikebana. And so she's going to be talking a little bit about that in a few moments. But I just wanted to remind you that you are tuned in to the Swing Museum podcast. This is all about art. And music and painting and our world, and welcome to it. So I'd like to carry on now with our evening, or afternoon rather, at Bird Key. Take a watch. Hi, everybody. You're tuned into the Swing Museum podcast, and today we are at beautiful Bird Key Yacht Club in Sarasota, Florida. And we've just gotten done with a wonderful meeting of the National League of American Pen Women. And there's some really interesting art things going on right now. And Polly Curran, who is a wonderful member and, she's more than a member, she's a mentor. She's introducing me to the world of ikebana. And I'd like to let her tell you a little bit about it. It's fascinating.
Yes, ikebana is Japanese traditional cultural floral design. It actually began in the 6th century in Japan on the advent of Buddhism as it entered the country. In the beginning, it was the Buddhist monks that practiced ikebana and provided flowers to the temple for Buddha. And gradually, over the years, over the centuries, it passed down from the hierarchy, the royals, to the shoguns, and then eventually to the average person. Ikebana International is a worldwide organization. Florida has chapters, 6 chapters here in our state, and Sarasota has a very active members preparing for our exhibition.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you have some information about the day and the location. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would love to have everyone come. It's held on Wednesday and Thursday, April 3rd and 4th. It's open to the public. It is held at the Sarasota Garden Club, which is at the corner of Boulevard and the Arts and Route 41, the Tamiami Trail. If you're looking for something close by, it's in front of the Hyatt Hotel. We will have demonstrations throughout each day. There will be docents there to explain to the guests and the public to know a little bit more. And I will be exhibiting at least 2, maybe a third banner. There are many chapters with different schools. Mm-hmm. And in our branch, in our chapter, we have 5 very active ones. Ikenobo, Ohara, Sogetsu, Wafu, and Ichio. all very different in style.
Fascinating.
So you'll learn a lot.
Well, to the watchers and listeners out there, if you're really interested and you are from this part of the country, come and check it out, especially if you think you know everything you know about art. There's always something new to learn. Thank you so much, Polly.
You're welcome.
This has
I'm
been
happy
great.
to do that.
Absolutely. You are tuned into the Swing Museum podcast. I'm Jan Eberle. We'll be right back.
Well, if you're just joining us, you are tuned in to the Swing Museum podcast. I'm your host, Jan Eberle. This is our maiden voyage this month, the month of March, and we're glad that you could join us. We'll be here the first of every month, with the exception of the summer, in which case I will be going out and filming footage of who's who and what's new in the world of art. In the meantime, I would like to go over the information that we just heard from our interview with Polly Curran. What a very fascinating way of art, and a very generous thing for her to do was to give of her time. This is the Japanese tapestry in Ikebana, Ikebana International, Sarasota Chapter 115, and they're presenting their 51st annual exhibition. Hardly a drop in the hat for those who have been around for centuries, wouldn't you say? This is all happening April 3rd and 4th, Wednesday, from 1 to 5 p.m. and Thursday from 10 to 4 p.m. And this will be at the Sarasota Garden Club Great Room at 1131 Boulevard of the Arts in beautiful downtown Sarasota. I'd also like to look forward to a couple of things coming up soon in the next month or so. I'm going to be taping some footage for our April podcast for the Sarasota Pen Women Awards for launching leaders into the arts. And these are our winners of the artists that are all from Manatee County and Sarasota County's high schools. And they're all seniors. And they have won from all three of our types of art, which would be basically art in drawing and sculpting or photography. Also in writing, which would be possibly a small book or some poetry. And of course in music, this being for composing. So we have a bunch of really interesting things going on that day. So I'm going to take some footage and bring it to you for April. Also, I want to look forward to our interview with publisher and author Brenda Spalding. She has so much to offer those around her who are getting into publishing, getting into writing, of course, and those who are aspiring to do better in their works. Brenda makes no secret also that she is a huge advocate for children's literacy. So we're going to be talking about that because we cannot, folks, forget about our children and how to teach them to read, among other wonderful, wonderful gifts. I'd like to, before we head off, I'd like to thank you for joining us in this podcast. And I hope that you can join us the first of every month, with the exception, as I said, of the summer. And I'll make that announcement. I'd like to go out with a video from 2008 of a very well-known and coveted orchestra that happens to play jazz and big band in Europe. And they are the Jack Million Band. They were performing at the Glenn Miller Festival, the coveted Glenn Miller Festival, and there's one tune that I happened to be there, yours truly, singing on that particular day in this show. It's called Humpty Dumpty Heart. Well, I hope you can join us next time. Be happy and be safe. Until next time, so long, everybody.
When Jack called me last year and asked me if I wanted to record a couple of tunes on the new album that was just released, I was very pleased and honored, because one thing about these guys is they're not just great musicians, but they are some of the super nicest people you ever want to know, and kind and generous. So from my last trip to Belgium, I'd like to thank them so much for their kindness. I was given the opportunity to make a few personal selections, which is always nice for me. And so one of the tunes we recorded is a personal favorite of a song my father did with the original arrangement with Glenn Miller. It's called Humpty Dumpty Heart.
Night, Dan.